and gentlemen, and welcome to our planning committee meeting today. We have one application along with reports on planning appeals, the planning enforcement service progress report, the section 106 legal agreements update, and planning appeal for Philomage. Just a reminder that at the last three reports will be an exempt item, so that when we come to it, any public still in the room will be asked to leave, and the live stream of the meeting will be ended. Thank you. Item 1 for this afternoon, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Hancock, who will be substituted by Councillor P. Linkley. We've also received apologies from Councillor Liggett, Councillor Ridgway, Councillor Jones, and Councillor Hall. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone with any other apologies? No. Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disposable pecuniary interests and or other interests not already on their register of interests in any item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do any members have interest to declare?
I'll be received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4. Item 4, the application, which is NED/22/00/00349/FL at Athenol. In line with our normal practice, I'm going to ask the planning officers to tell us about any late comments and to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans on the site. I will allow the officers to complete the presentation. Consequently, members, could you please reserve any points of order or questions about the process until the end?
I don't believe we've received any late representation in relation to the application. So we can move on to the first slide, please. The first slide shows the application site highlighted in there. The application site forms a garage site situated in to the north of the High Street at Athenol. Next slide, please. The red line location plan and block plan illustrate that the site is accessed via an existing vehicle access, which is situated between adjacent residential properties identified as 35 and 39 High Street on that plan. The southern edge of the application site is set back approximately 30 metres from the highway edge. As you can see from the red line plan, the proximity, so the proposed dwelling would be situated relatively central within the application site itself, and that's actually red. Thank you. Next slide, please. This slide shows a cross section of the proposed development in relation to the adjacent property, Hinton High Street, in this case, number 39 High Street. That image is at the top. You can see the proposed dwelling, as mentioned, and its relationship with the adjacent dwelling. Next slide, please. Similarly, the cross section here is showing the relationship of the proposed property, this relationship with the adjacent property identified as 45 High Street. These slides show that sight lines from habitable windows at the principal elevation of the proposed dwelling in relation to properties fronting High Street. They also show the separation distances between those habitable windows. Thank you. Next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed front elevation, front and rear elevation of the proposed dwelling. And edged in red, as you can see, is the superseded proposals for dwelling. So, in effect, the plans have been amended, and the edged in red line you can see there is what was initially proposed in terms of the height and massing of the dwellings proposed. And similarly, for the side elevations of the proposed dwelling, again, the superseded is being etched in there. The next slide. Moving on to the photos, it's just one or two photos of the site. This is looking at the site square on High Street. So in the centre of the photo is the vehicular access. which runs between the existing dwellings, fronting High Street. Trees within the application site can be seen towards the end of the access track again in the centre of this image. Views of the specific site of the proposed dwelling is somewhat obscured by the existing properties that front High Street. Next slide, please. The final photo is taken from within the application site itself, looking in a southwesterly direction. On the left-hand side of the photo is a garage building which will be retained with the addition of a new pitched roof. The photo shows the rear elevations of the properties fronting High Street, 39 in the centre of the picture. As you can see on the left-hand side of the image, beyond the garage building, existing trees, which they have forward in applicant's ownership, and is somewhat screened views towards the rear garden and the rear elevation of 45 High Street, which can just be seen beyond that. To summarise the conclusions and main planning considerations which are set out in the full officer report, officers of the view the subjective condition the proposals would represent an acceptable visual addition to the site that would satisfactorily preserve the amenity levels currently enjoyed by the occupiers of neighbouring properties. In relation to the mature sycamore trees or not removal, when taking the views of the council's three officers into account, officers are of the view that the trees will not merit protection by way of a free conservation order, and their removal to facilitate the development proposed is therefore considered to be acceptable. It's considered that there are no other technical reasons that would be contrary to officer's recommendation of condition of approval in this instance, and that concludes the officer's presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Just one element of clarification, if I may, Chair. On the top of page 25, there are a couple of measurements, 10 metres and 25 metres are referred to. The 10 metre distance should actually be 14 metres. I apologise for that, Chair, but that does and make the other measurements and the 25 metre separation distance. That makes some arithmetical sense. So I apologise for that error. And of course, it doesn't change the officer view in terms of the impact on the number 39 High Street. It makes that in absolute number terms better separation distance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now, I do believe we've got two speakers this afternoon, but I'm going to ask our clerk to go through the proceedings now so everyone is fully aware.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can say we have two speakers this afternoon. George Pavel, who is the agent, and Victoria Jones, who will be joining us by Zoom. Both of the speakers will have 3 minutes to put forward their views. There will be a reminder given by the clerk when 30 seconds remain. At the end of the 3 minutes, members of the committee will have an opportunity to ask the speaker questions, if necessary, or clarify any points that they have made. After the speaker has addressed the committee and answered any questions, then they will be allowed to remain in the meeting, but they will not be allowed to participate further from this point. The chair will then open up the meetings for questions to officers, a debate by the committee, and finally a determination on the application by a vote. The votes will be taken by roll call. Finally, members, this meeting is being recorded, and that will be placed on the council's website. In order to assist those who are watching on YouTube or joining via Zoom, it'd be helpful if members could speak clearly and directly into the microphones. And finally, members, please note that others may choose to copy this recording. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The first speaker is Mr. Jeff Blackall. If you'd like to take the table, thank you. If you could confirm your name and let you understand the proceedings.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Blackall. I'm a chartered architectural technologist and agent for the applicant. This application was submitted back in April, and I hope that it will be determined today in favour of the proposals. The village of Atherley is largely built upon a steep sloping hillside, where many of the houses stand above their neighbouring properties. This is characteristic of the area, and in this case, so long as there are no undue issues with distances between principal elevations, then there should be no barrier to building. Accordingly, a scheme was submitted for a substantial 5-bedroom family home of 2 stories, plus rooms situated in the roof. After due consideration and following objections from the neighbours, the planning officer requested that the height of the building should be lowered and the overall floor area reduced. Amended plans were drawn submitted showing the ground floor level lowered, the building reduced to 2 stories and the total floor area reduced from 3,027 square feet to 2,230 square feet. The roof line was dropped by approximately 6 feet. The distances about the building are generally in compliance with the supplementary documents successfully placing a guide to good practice. The render scheme was better received by the planning officer, although the previous objectives were not entirely satisfied. Section showing the height and distance relationship of the proposals with number 45 High Street was drawn up and submitted, showing the pitch through banner to the garage block, retained to assist with screening. The property number 47 High Street will not be overlooked by a principal elevation of habitable rooms. The proposed bedroom wing on southeast gable facing number 47 will not provide an overlooking opportunity, as it is to be an obscure basin for daylight purposes only, and is therefore effectively within a blank gate, not requiring a full separation distance of 31 metres. The distance from the centre of the proposed gable to the centre of 47 gable lane would be approximately 40 metres, whereas 12.5 metres would be usually an acceptable distance in those circumstances. I suggest that the applicants have demonstrated a willingness at all times to work closely with the planning officer and to pay due cognizance to the concerns of the neighbours. We trust therefore that this application may now receive the approval of this planning committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Victoria Jones. Can you hear us?
Hi, my name is Victoria Jones. I'm at 45 High Street. I think the property looks beautiful and will fit in with the area. My main concern is the distance measured from our house to the proposed house. This is excluding our conservatory measured from the main building, not the conservatory, the 21 metres. Our conservatory is our main living area. We dine in there, we eat in there, we spend our whole Christmas in there. The house is above 2.5 metres in inclination to our house, which therefore means the ground floor will be looking directly into my children's bedrooms and looking into our play area in the garden. Again, also looking straight into our conservatory. Although there's 2 trees there at the moment that you saw from the imagery, 6 months of the year, there's no leaves on those trees, and therefore they're looking directly into our house. So the distance I'm suggesting isn't measured correctly and the inclination isn't taken into account. My second point is I'd like to ensure that the 2 trees at the end of our garden aren't damaged when the garages are taken down, as the roots are attached to the garages, and these are our only support for privacy at the moment. So although there are privacy, they're going to be a hindrance for daylight to the new proposed property, and therefore I'd like to make sure that no damage is done to them when it's been built. Also, once those garages are removed, what's going to be put into place that there's no floods from the rainfall going into our garden, because we've seen this on the high street where there's problems, where there's excess flood and then it falls down onto the high street and causes problems with the houses below. That's all.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, thank you very much. I'll now ask if there are any questions for the officers. Councillor Ranier?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple really for the actors. The width of the path, the road or the access up to the new property. What's the width of that? It's narrowest point. Will it take a big lorry? ambulance. It looks fairly narrow. I don't know if the pictures don't really look that here.
I couldn't give you the exact measurement of the tipping head council, apologies for that, but in terms of more general highway safety considerations, we've obviously consulted Derbyshire County National Highways officers who are, there's no objections to the proposed development on a highway safety perspective, and in addition to that, we're fairly clear that the existing use of the site as a garage site for traffic generating use, therefore, adding that into the bounds we considered the application would not really turn an acceptable harm from a highway safety perspective. As regards refuse specifically, that could be something that was looked at subsequently in terms of potentially a condition. I know highways have mentioned it, but I think they were more referring to being storage areas rather than the necessity for bin lorry to access this single dwelling. So I assume that the collection would be taken from the highway itself.
I think I took it the fact that the two garages are there, that obviously vehicle access is acceptable. I just didn't know whether that width would take the bin lorry, an ambulance, a fire engine or anything like that, or whether the necessity is there to do that.
Not to receive it as was just advised, Chair, we've not received any objection from the highway authority on that. I've actually driven my car up there. I'm a big car, but you can get a car easily in and out of there. But
Amazing those smart cars.
It's not wide, it is people to the top. But my view would be there's nothing there that wouldn't enable bins to be properly accessed. It may, as Colin said, require that the bins are presented at the curbside. That may be the requirement. And certainly in terms of access for ambulance and fire, they would find a way if needs to be.
Thank you, Adrian. You've done the volunteer.
Chair, I do have another question, if that's all right. Adrian, the screening of the trees and the pitch of the garage, I'm quite happy and accept the pitch for the garage will be additional screening. I think that's a great move. But to assist Mrs. Jones with what she's asking for, are those the trees she doesn't want taken down? Is that the screening that's helping her at the moment, or what's happening at the moment? No, just checking out. I don't know which these trees are.
Yeah,
it's referred to.
It's my understanding that there's some existing trees beyond the garages that will be retained. There are trees adjacent to the garage that are earmarked for demolition. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Mrs. Jones is referring to the trees directly adjacent to the garages that will be removed and whether they will be protected as part of the removal of those garages. There are no conditions recommended to preserve those trees or their root protection zones, but that might be something that members would like to consider.
Just in addition to that, Chair, I've just put the slide up back on the screen. Hopefully helps council earlier. Those trees that you can see on the left, Colin will correct me if I'm wrong, that they are outside the application site, and I believe are the ones that Mrs. Jones is referring to, the ones that set out in the Webster report, the ones to the right hand side of the screen.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Armitage?
Yeah, could you tell me what's the difference in height between the proposed development and the houses which are on the roadside? We saw two houses, and I just wondered what is the distance in height between the two of them?
The distance or the difference in height is to be around 2.5 meters. The site, this is generally slopes upwards towards the proposed dwelling, so that's the difference in height. According to the cross section plans that have been provided.
Is that because the ground level has come up, or are they on the same ground level?
The application property that should be into the hillside, but it's part of the existing topography means that it would be positioned and elevated position to those properties, which from High Street.
So if, what will be, what shall I say, what's the true height, if you follow me, from the ground level upwards compared to the others?
In effect, we acknowledge that the proposed property would be positioned at an elevated position in comparison to the properties fronting High Street. However, in this instance, we looked at the separation distances involved between habitable room windows, distances between the habitable room windows to the southwesterly facing principal elevation of the proposed property, and the common boundaries with the facing properties. And we believe that this is in accord with successful places by and large, and where it's not, there are planning conditions that could mitigate any harm. One of those conditions would be the obscure placing of the window serving bedroom number 4, which is the closest habitable window at an elevated position to 45 High Street.
Yeah, could I ask another question? Thank you, Joe. It's the question of the tree. Now, as I look at the photograph, the tree on the right-hand side, the sycamore. Now, at the site meeting, you could see a lot more of it. Perhaps you could see the photograph which was shown at the site meeting, because this one basically doesn't show much about it at all. But this is quite a substantial tree. And I understand that the proposal is to fell this tree, and there are no PTOs on it. Now, we're being given news and everything to plant as many trees as possible. Well, that tree is about 40, 50 years old. And what's the point planting all these little shrubs, which half of them will die? When you think there's a tree like that, you just want to do it to please the developer. And I cannot see the sense in it. And if we look at the drawings of the plant, and it shows the tree as a circular, if you could find the original plant, which we saw at the side visit, you'll perhaps see what I mean. Yeah, you could just see the thing there. There's one there, slap bang in the middle, and then there's one at the back. Now, I look at it like this: if you move the building just a few couple of meters further back, there will be no need whatsoever to fell a perfectly healthy tree, and also the one behind. Can you tell me, perhaps explain to me the sense in felling a perfectly healthy tree?
I think in this instance, given the proximity of the tree to the proposed dwelling, officers would be of the view that retention of the tree would perhaps preclude proposed development. So we've had to take a view on the matter of the removal of the tree, and as suggested in my conclusions, that we sought the views of the council's tree officer, and taking a view based on that. And ultimately, the view is that the council wouldn't, or officers wouldn't, afford protection to this particular tree by way of a tree preservation for a number of factors, one of which is its amenity contribution, which is diminished as a consequence of it being set back from the highway and only really seeing the glimpses on High Street. Secondly, the tree would be, the trees that are earmarked for removal would be further wooded elements at the rear of the site, at the northern edge of the site. So in terms of that wooded backdrop, if you like, that would be retained despite the removal of the tree. further consideration raised by the tree officer was the tree is a boundary tree, which does raise some potential issues in terms of whether it would merit protection. But ultimately, to conclude, the view of officers is that the retention of the tree would likely preclude the proposed development of the site with a single dwelling of this nature, and ultimately the tree wouldn't be a merit to preserve to impose a tree preservation order and protect it in that manner.
That's all right, very interesting, but as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a moral thing. We're going to put two perfectly healthy trees down to facilitate a house. I've nothing wrong with the house being there, but with a bit of shooting about, I'm sure that the trees could be saved. That's just my opinion.
Chair, I just add to what Colin said in terms of the issue of the tree. Chair, as Colin's explained, we've taken a view on its position and its relationship to the development, and we don't believe that the house, the proposed form, and the tree could both be concurrent. Couldn't both exist in our view, and that's why we come to the conclusion that in this instance, for the reasons set out by Colin, the development should be precluded from it because the tree in absolutely does offer sufficient levels of amenity to warrant its protection over and above everything else. That's in balance that members will have to come to a view on. In terms of the changing around that Councillor Armitage refers to, of course, we've not discussed that with the applicant, Chair. So again, if that was an issue for members that you wished us to investigate with the applicant, we wouldn't be able to do that here with any assurances with respect to that. We need to go back to the applicant to discuss that further with them.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No, thank you. I will now open the floor for debate, and after that, I will ask the clerk to inform us about motions. Does anyone want to open the floor for debate, or do you want to go straight to the motion? Councillor Elliott.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to on about this tree again. I'm sorry to say, it's the trees, but no. You said that it's detrimental to the building, is it? Or its proximity of? Is that it's detrimental to the footings, or you couldn't move it a yard, the footings a yard away, and the whole building a yard away? Is that what you're saying? Why have you come to the conclusion that it can't be pollarded or crowned, be kept, as opposed to failed? That's all I'm trying to find out in my mind. I think now the volume of the building has been reduced. I think it's fabulous, and I have no issue with this application. I have an issue with the trees.
The conclusion we've come to, Chair, is because the application seeks, in effect, consent to the dwelling at the expense of the two trees. That's what's shown to be determined. And it's the view that we've taken in consultation with the advice that we get from the arboricultural officer. The tree itself isn't, so its amenity value isn't as great as to warrant the refusal of the application at the expense of the tree. And so we come to the judgment that in this instance, our view is that there is no reason on the issue of the tree alone to prevent the development taking place. And my view would be, as it stands, the tree is so close to the proposed dwelling that it's unlikely to survive the building works on site. That would be my view. However, that doesn't stop the committee, if you choose to come to a conclusion that the development is acceptable and the tree should be retained and it takes its chances with works, for example. I'm advised by colleagues normally on the issue of conditions. I don't believe that there's reason why a condition couldn't be required imposed to require a retention of that tree. But I couldn't say to you that its long-term health would be guaranteed should you do it that way around. So you could impose a condition included within the landscaping condition to require that tree to be retained. It's the enforceability of that down the line without formal protection, which just gives some cause to how that could be done. But it could be done. I wouldn't wish to guarantee the long-term viability of that tree post development taking place.
Thanks, Adrian, and that's where I'm at, you know, do we give the tree a chance? I believe we should, I believe we do. It's a screening for Mrs. Jones, I believe, if it's these trees she's talking about. But why would you put a perfectly healthy tree down if you can make it work, if you can go around it? And I'm all for the application, but I'm all for keeping that tree, or at least giving it its chance to survive.
Just on good clarification, Chair, the tree that we're talking about, the big sycamore tree on the boundaries, is the one that is between property that's proposed and Mrs. Jones's property. It's a different issue.
But it's still an 1800-year-old tree or whatever. I'd like to see it stay there.
But we have to phrase a condition, Chair, in accordance with condition 8 that makes specific reference to notwithstanding the submitted plans that the trees on the site should be retained and measures to protect them during development, etc. Give it the best chance. Yeah. We wouldn't normally intend putting a protection order on a tree within the council's ownership, as in this case, because we are deemed to be a responsible owner. So it will give us the opportunity as well to frame a condition that works and also look at the measures that may go towards ownership protection of it.
You believe to turn me a tree over soon, then, Adrian. I'm quite happy to go to the motion, Chair.
I'll ask the clerk to explain the situation with motions.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Please bear in mind, members, that a motion must be moved and seconded before the vote is taken. If an amendment to a motion is moved and seconded, then that amendment will be voted on first. If a motion is to be moved which goes against the officer recommendations, then the member who has moved the motion must give the reasons for doing so. The reason for moving the motion against officer recommendations should comprise the relevant planning issues and be supported by evidence as necessary. If a motion to reject officer recommendations falls, or in other words, it is not passed, that doesn't mean that the recommendations are automatically approved. Rather, you will need to take a positive decision to refer the motion in favour of the recommendations or a different course of action. This will need to be approved by the committee through another vote. In terms of the timings of the motions, these should be moved and seconded after the committee has heard, read and discussed the evidence before it. Chair has now indicated that we have reached that point, and she has now asked for open the floor to motions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As we've all heard everything before us today, we're on the committee with the application. I'm now going to open the floor for a motion. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy with the reduction in volume of the building. I'm happy with the pitch on the garage for extra screening. I'm happy to follow officer recommendation, providing we write up the recommendation about the tree, trying to keep the tree or giving it a special shot.
It would be wording, Chair, that we would incorporate within condition 8 to require that, and then following through some issue about retention or replanting, which would be condition 9. So it would be trying to do that.
Thank you, Chair. That's fine.
Thank you. Could we have the vote? I believe we do this by roll call.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Chair, I just ask one further question. Councillor, let's just refer to that one tree, the larger tree on the side boundary, or the other tree on the back boundary. Thank you, Chair.
So just to be clear then, members, it is to approve officer recommendations subject to changes to the conditions to reflect the discussion today about the trees in that area. That the essence of it, members? Okay, in which case, Councillor Armitage.
For.
Councillor Cooper.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Hartsall.
Against.
Councillor Powell.
For.
Councillor Rouse.
For.
Councillor Ruff.
For.
And Councillor Wingley.
For.
The motion has passed, Chair.
Thank you all very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You may take the benefits you so wish. Right, moving on to item 6, planning appeals lodged and determined.
I think the planning manager may or may not be commenting on this, Chair.
We're trying to work the technology, Chair. I apologise.
Carry on.
Bear with me a second. The report there, Chair, is for members to note. You may have seen recently that all members are now receiving the decisions that we get on appeals, and that's to ensure that we keep up to date with any changes that members the constitution of the council, if you like, through election or whatever, and we missed recently that one of those changes. So all members are now receiving decisions. Just in terms of the paper before you, I'm sure members will have seen the 2 red mile decisions which followed an informal hearing a couple of months ago, and members may recall the discussion that took place in respect to those applications at Killamarsh, and we may return to that debate shortly. But that in particular is worth noting, and a partial award of costs has been awarded against the council in respect of those 2 appeals, so we wait any further development on that. In terms of the dismissed appeals, Chair, the one for Mr. Gay at Milltown made some interesting comments regarding sustainability of development in countryside areas, but did give a great deal of validation to the areas of multiple environmental sensitivity, which is set out in the local plan, and which you'll see often referred to in committee reports. So we're very pleased with that decision and the validity that it gives to some of your environmental protection policies that we often discuss at committee. Mr. Rowland made, again, a good decision in terms of the council, but that made some interesting comments in respect of limited development in the Greenbelt, and took the view that even limited engineering works in the Greenbelt can have a detrimental impact. So again, well worth a read and consideration of that issue. Again, validation of your strong Greenbelt protection policies, which again we often discuss and debate at committee, Chair. So they're just some highlights from the 4 appeals reported. There's going to be another few to come for you next time round. Are there any questions, shall we take?
Are there any questions? Item 7, matters of urgency. I have none. As we move to items 8, which is the exclusion of public. The public be excluded from the meeting during the discussions of the following items of business to avoid the disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 2, 3, 5, Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access Information Variation Order 2008.
Members are here, Chair, that would is a consent. Okay, the Zoom feed will remain on, if that's okay, Martin, but the YouTube sort of broadcast will end. I think that's necessary because we've got some presentations which you're going to be using. Okay, thank you, Chair.